My parents always told me Arabs and black people are thieves, Muslims are terrorists. I grew up listening to the news, going to school, where I was taught the very same things. Arabs, black people, Muslims in general are barbaric, uncivilized people, and violent by nature. The irony is that my parents are Polish immigrants. They would experience discrimination themselves. They would be at the receiving end of similar comments. And, more funny enough, they were in constant fear that the far right was going to get to power in France and going to expel all the family and send us back to Poland. But still, this is how they raised me. So hello and welcome, I'm William, a researcher in sociology at the University of Warwick, and this is a video series about my latest book, Muslims in the Neoliberal Empire. So when I was a teenager, I would take part in jokes with friends about sending all kinds of people to concentration camps. We were casually joking about harming Jews, Muslims, Arabs, black people, gypsies, but for us it was just jokes. It was just the norm. And if the other kid strikes back, then you end up into a fight. The rule at school was bully or be bullied. It's nothing outlandish when you know that a modern school was designed the same way prisons were designed. So even though I was bullied at school like almost everyone else, I would bully other kids because that was the unspoken law. Now, ironically, we are adding more layers. My parents sent me to Catholic schools because they're Polish. For them, it's not about the religion, it was about the cultural identity. They're not really religious themselves. So at school, we would hear about Jesus turning the other cheek, and we all thought, that's so lame. Yeah, Jesus wouldn't have lasted very long in our school. How did I stop believing what I was taught for 20 years of my life? And the bigger irony is later in life, I became a sociologist and I decided to study Muslims. And things went very well in France, but when I started doing fieldwork in the UK, so no one hurt me, manipulated me, stole from me more than Muslims. You can ask my friends, you can ask my wife, that was such a compilation of misadventures. But my question then, when I look at myself, is how come I don't hate Muslims? So first, the light bulb moment is when I studied Islamic theology. So I don't have any theological qualifications on anything, but I wanted to understand all the background. And this is when I realized that, hang on a second, these guys, they don't follow Islam. They say they're Muslim, but they don't follow Islam at all. Some people say they identify as Muslims, but for them, Islam is a mix of inherited habits, cultural, traditional elements, and are very, very different from what Islam teaches. Now, why do some people identify as Muslims but still have a caste system? How can you tell me that people who hit their wives are following Islam, knowing that the Prophet of Islam never hit a woman, a kid, or an animal in his entire life? Second thing is, why do people commit crimes? A lot of the narrative my parents told me, school told me, the media told me, is that the problem is all these immigrants, they bring crime into our country. But the thing is, if you study history, crime existed way before immigration. It's nothing to do with culture. There is crime in every single country in the world. Why do people commit crime in the first place? It has been demonstrated that crime, especially, we have to be specific, when it comes to crime from people from lower socio-economic backgrounds, it comes from government policies that don't give people the opportunities, enough opportunities for them to escape the condition by legal means. So of course people are going to commit crime if they don't see any way out. And the third thing is, something doesn't really add up. I've noticed, why is it that the government, the media, including my parents, told me that Arabs and black people are uncivilized? And why are they the problem number one in the country? Because if we think about it, kicking all black people and Arabs from France is not going to resolve things like poverty. It's not going to bring more money or more food on our table. Is it them who steal jobs, or is it the fault of people who give them the jobs because they don't want to afford to pay people with minimal wage. They'd rather pay someone under the table to make more profit. Because where does the money go? Taxes, fees to other services reclaimed by the government or other companies. So it's not really immigrants who take the jobs or take the money. It's people who already sit on huge piles of cash. So what is this narrative the media serves us if not a smokescreen to cover up the mistakes of the government? So, and I've realized all of that in my early 20s, I remember. And at this point, I didn't need to meet any Muslim or black person to figure this out. If you read enough about politics and economics, you understand how things work. It's those in power who actually control all these policies and control where the money flows that create this kind of environment, and which completely messes up the society. So my parents were not right. They were just repeating what other people were saying. In a way, they were like sheep because they, weren't interested in reading about these topics to understand how the society, economics actually work. Did I want to be a sheep too? Of course not. Now, this phenomenon has a name when it comes to politicians, charismatic individuals, media figures and stuff. It was coined by Jacques Lacan. Subject supposed to know. We trust, this is human nature, we trust blindly anyone who puts themselves in a position of authority or has enough charisma to make people believe that he knows better, even if they're completely wrong. And then we submit to peer pressure. Now, there is an experiment in the 1950s done by Solomon Asch about peer pressure, that if you were alone in a room of people who would say the same thing, but even if it was completely wrong, you would submit to the general opinion, even if it was completely illogical. I'll drop a link. There's a fascinating video made about it. Fourth, I think it was meeting people face to face. And I'm not talking about very happy encounters with wonderful people. I'm talking about horrible encounters as well. When it comes to people who follow their religion to the T, they are rare as gold. They are proofs that, beyond cultures, beyond beliefs, peace and harmony, they don't have an inherent culture or religion, or one culture inherently violent, or one culture, one religion inherently violent. It's what people make of their culture and their beliefs. Because you have violent people across all religions and all philosophies and all beliefs. You have violent conservatives, violent liberals, you have violent Muslims, violent Christians, violent Buddhists even. And at the same time, you have really wonderful Muslims, wonderful Christians, wonderful Buddhists, wonderful atheists. No, it's about, do you want to make this world a better place? And if so, how do you do it? It's not because someone shares the same skin color, the same culture, the same belief that they're going to be your friend and they're going to support you. Now we're in a world where it's not even left against right or liberals against conservatives, but you have Republicans against Republicans, conservative against conservatives. It's almost like everyone is fighting each other or trying to find a reason to fight each other. People who are extremely good are a minority within their own groups, and people who are extremely harmful are a minority as well. And there's everyone else in the middle. We're all somewhere on this journey. What needs to be fixed is the dynamics that enable harmful behavior and thinking. Because ultimately, everyone in the world wants to be, basic things. We want food on our table. We want safety, stability. Want to be around our loved ones. We don't like to go to war. We don't like conflict inherently. That's coded in our DNA. We have things like flight or fight response, but there's a reason why we're allergic to changes, because we, by nature, love stability. So long story short, it's just a story of me finding out that the world is not binary, it's not black and white, but it's multidimensional, it's multicolor. And regardless of belief, culture, religion, the one thing that I've taken as a compass for life is trying to figure out if whatever I say, whatever I do, any decision I make, is it going towards making chaos, or is it going towards making harmony? Don't trust people because they're similar to you, and same, don't distrust people because they're too different from you. There's always commonalities across differences, and even when you have so many things in common, there's always a breaking point where, that's the difference that breaks things. So what's the common thread? This is what I'm looking for in people. Do we have this common thread of trying to make this world a better place or not? Can we acknowledge that we're not perfect, that we are on a journey? Can we acknowledge that we don't have the whole truth? And can we acknowledge that the other person is going to make mistake as well? And for them to make these mistakes, there is a reason for that. But then, do they persevere with these mistakes, or are they trying to improve themselves and correct each other? I've seen people being super harmful and, changing their life, turning their life around. It's possible for people to change. It's just very, very rare. It's very difficult for some people, but it's possible. And look, I grew up hating black people, Arabs, and all sorts of anyone who was not white, basically. And I was able to turn things around. But how long did it take for me to realize that? It took me years and years and years of, reading, reflecting, and interrogating my own worldviews, because, change is not something very easy for us who like stability. I ask myself, am I betraying my culture, my roots, my traditions? Am I betraying my country? In the end, no. I've realized that, my parents, the media and the governments, they had either, their own agenda, or they just, repeated things. It was not based on truth. It was not based on facts. It was not based on anything but the will to, either protect themselves or divide people for their own personal gains, or with the illusion of safety. That's my journey. And if you want to know more about my research and the topics I talk about in my book, which are basically, how we have actually been colonized with these kind of ideas and what can we do about it, feel free to subscribe to my newsletter. This is for no spam. It's just for updates on live events I would be doing either in person or online. In my next video, I'll be talking more specifically about internet trolls and why, for example, when it comes to Muslim spaces, we always criticize trolls for being Salafis or Wahhabis, but I think they're not Salafi at all, or not Wahhabi. It's something else. But yeah, stay tuned. And again, take care of yourselves and each other.